Welcome back. Let's look at what jihad is not. Jihad is not, and I reiterate, it is not a violent concept. Not a violent concept that is specifically and only for Muslims. Jihad just is an Arabic word that has been bandied around to produce fear. And it has produced exactly what it was meant to produce. Being a struggle, being a striving, jihad is not meant to be a struggle and striving with an external force. It is meant to be a struggle and striving with your spirit and God's spirit. This is what we must tell Muslims who are not quite sure what it is. The jihad that is mentioned in the newspapers has been mentioned as any time somebody gets mad, they can do a jihad on somebody. Again, that is not a Quranic and Muslim point of view in general. That has been taken way out of whack by the extremists. I will say again that the Quran mentions several times that the Jews and the Christians are called people of the book. In Medina, where Islam first really began, they lived amongst the Jews and amongst the Christians without any fear, without any animosity at that time. What has happened is that we have looked at the Muslims because this is in our generation. But what I want to show you is that the jihad has been waged by the Christian church in its entirety. And I mentioned the Christian church from the point of view of a Muslim. So you have to remember that back from, I think it was 1095 AD, for around about 200 years, the Catholic Church, which again you must remember, I know you're saying this is not my church that did that, it wasn't my religion, but looking at it from the point of view from outside, the Catholic Church was the church of that time. And for about 200 years, the Catholic Church waged and I'll put it into the Arabic terms, a jihad against anybody that was not Catholic. In that 200 years, we don't know the exact numbers, but roughly about 60 million people were killed. Considering those days, they didn't have bombs, they didn't have machine guns, they didn't have chemical weapons or anything like that. We are understanding that that was all done one-on-one. When the Christians wanted to retake Jerusalem, they kind of went in there, for one of a less colloquial term, all guns blazing, but all swords swishing, to take Jerusalem. And they did not let anybody that was not a Catholic survive. They killed Muslims and Jews willy-nilly. They had literally nothing survived. And Jerusalem came back and forward into the Christians' hands and the Muslims' hands several times. And each time the Muslims retook Jerusalem, there was not the mass slaughter that there was as when the Christians took Jerusalem. So we must understand that their concept of jihad has been brought over from the Crusades till now. They're saying we're going to take that, going to keep them at bay and make sure they don't come back here again, because history says that the Christians want to take Jerusalem back again. That's what history says. And so what jihad is not, it is not a violent concept. I will say this again. It is an internal struggle and an external struggle between you and God and your family and just in life that happens in general. What we must understand is that when somebody mentions jihad, do not allow fear to come in. Jihad, and I keep going back to this. Jihad is not a violent concept. Please understand that. It is something that has been purported by the Western media to say that anybody who is a Muslim, anybody who wears a turban or a burqa or a hijab, they're obviously terrorists and extremists. That is not correct. And we must not let that taint our point of view. What will happen and what jihad will do to them is when you talk to them about Christ, eventually bringing that in, that will bring an internal struggle in. Because Muslims do love God. That is one thing that you have to say. I mean, they pray 5 times a day. They give pretty much left, right, and center. They fast. they do have a very religious and a very loving of God spirit. So when you talk to them about the real God, about Jesus Christ, and becoming that Savior, that Messiah that they are looking for in their lives, that will bring a jihad into their lives, that will bring an eternal struggle, that will bring an internal striving into them. Because the Spirit of God, it strives with man. And the Spirit of God will take your words and make that struggle internal. At first you may get some resistance, but this is where your jihad now comes in. You struggle in the Spirit. You struggle and strive in the Spirit for that soul. You have to remember that that's a soul. That's a soul that if we don't reach that soul will go to hell believing that it's right, or at least trying to be right, and it is incorrect. So use the word jihad as a tool rather than as a whip. So take that, put that into practice in your life, and allow God to use you. Thank you.